right then, get ready to dive into 18th century England and Wales. We're talking a crazy time of massive cities, social climbers, and even a revolution in how families viewed themselves.
Absolutely, and it's incredible how these seemingly separate pieces, overflowing chamber pots to like early workers' rights, all weave together into this tapestry of change.
A tapestry that I'm guessing, from the looks of it, maybe wasn't the freshest smelling. Let's talk about those exploding cities, Manchester, Liverpool, those sorts of places. These were the powerhouses of the early Industrial Revolution.
Right.
But I can't imagine they were exactly like, sparkling clean.
No, not exactly what you'd call pristine. Think about it. Waste disposal before modern plumbing. Disease was just out of control. Cholera and typhoid, these were very real threats.
Makes you appreciate a good sewer system, right?
No, suddenly my commute doesn't seem so bad. But the research does show that some things were getting better. It wasn't all doom and gloom, right? Absolutely. We start seeing, for example, streetlights, the very first hints of social services, and even a growing awareness, however slowly, of the importance of public health. These tiny steps compared to today were a huge shift in mindset, really setting the scene for how we think about, social safety nets now.
Amazing how those historical echoes carry forward, right?
Yeah.
So while some folks were fighting just for basic sanitation, the aristocracy was off, I don't know, sipping tea and wearing powdered wigs, I suppose.
Yeah.
Did their world even intersect with, the struggles of normal people?
More than you might think. Even though we have this image of rigid classes, 18th century England actually had some social mobility. For example, you had these merchants, newly wealthy, finding ways to climb that social ladder. Clever investments, smart marriages, you name it. Your notes even mentioned a fascinating guy, a textile merchant, made a fortune, used it to buy land, and boom, eventually secured a fancy title for his son.
It's amazing how far a good power suit, even back then, could take you. Speaking of upward mobility, what's the deal with all these improvements to farming I keep seeing? Was that just about, the aesthetics making their estates look nice, or was there something more substantial going on?
Well, it was a bit of both, but these agricultural innovations were a really big deal. New crops, like turnips, they helped put nutrients back into the soil, made it healthier. Plus, you had advancements in breeding livestock. This all meant more food. More food meant a more diverse diet for some, and critically, it fueled the growth of those exploding cities we were talking about, more people to live in those cities.
Right. More food, more people, more problems, more solutions, like a never-ending cycle.
Exactly.
But something else in these notes struck me as a real twist. It seems there was this growing focus on, quote, expressions of affection within families. Seems odd given the harshness we often associate with the era. What do you make of that?
It's a really interesting shift. Before, children were almost like mini adults. But the 18th century started to recognize childhood as this distinct phase of life, influenced by groups like the Quakers. They stressed personal piety, family closeness, that kind of thing. Think of them like the influencers of their day, changing ideas about raising kids and emotional bonds.
Fascinating how perspectives can change so drastically in such a short time. But we'd be remiss if we didn't address the elephant, or should I say working child, in the room. How do we reconcile this burgeoning love for children with the, frankly, awful reality of child labor?
It's a tough one. Sadly, child labor was incredibly common, especially in those brutal factories and workhouses. However, even as the century went on, people began to question the whole system. Reformers spoke out against it, and there was this growing idea that, hey, even children have rights.
So, while it may have started with children toiling away, the 18th century ends with the seeds of change planted for something much more just and equitable. What a century of contradictions.
You said it. And as you think back on this turbulent time, consider how those same themes, progress and contradiction, continue to influence us today. Social safety nets, workers' rights, these are discussions we're still having, echoing those issues faced in 18th century England and Wales.
It really makes you think.